Good evening and welcome to both our guest authors and our viewers. I'm Allison Bainbridge and I have the pleasure of introducing our distinguished guest authors. The book featured at the center of the discussion today is Power Play. It's described as the outrageous inside story of Elon Musk and Tesla's bid to build the world's greatest car. Elon Musk is among the most controversial titans of Silicon Valley. To some, he's a genius and a visionary. To others, he's a mercurial huckster. Billions of dollars have been gained and lost on his tweets. His personal exploits are the stuff of tabloids. But for all his outrageous talk of mind uploading and space travel, his most audacious vision is the one closest to the ground, the electric car. There are people close to me that admit that they would love to have a Tesla, yet they're hesitant to purchase one since it benefits Elon Musk. I've heard podcasts recently discussing the fact that car companies have ramped up their creation and manufacturing for EVs, electric vehicles, as a result of the success of Tesla vehicles. In California, I read a statistic from 2019 that said a study showed that out of 52,807 EVs sold, 40,000, the vast majority of those sold, were Tesla vehicles. When Tesla was founded in the 2000s, electric cars were novelties trotted out and thrown on the scrap heap by car makers for more than a century. But where most onlookers saw only failure, a small band of Silicon Valley engineers and entrepreneurs saw potential. But as the saying goes, to make a small fortune in cars, you need to start with a big fortune. Tesla would undergo a truly hellish 15 years, beset by rivals, pressured by investors, hobbled by whistleblowers, buoyed by its loyal supporters. Musk himself often proved Tesla's worst enemy, as we all know. His antics more than once took the company he had initially funded largely with his own money to the brink of collapse. Was he an underdog, an anti-hero, a con man, or some combination of the three? Today, we are going to hear about that. Our guest author this evening is Tim Higgins. He had a front row seat for the drama, the pile-ups, wrestling for control, meltdowns, and the unlikeliest outcome of all, success. His thrilling new book, Power Play, is a story of power, recklessness, struggle, and triumph. It is not a work of fiction, as you might think if you just heard this last description, but rather an exhilarating work of nonfiction that looks at how a team of eccentrics and innovators beat the odds and change the future. Tim is an automotive and technology reporter for the Wall Street Journal. He appears regularly as a contributor on CNBC. His writing has won several awards, and he's a 5-time finalist for the Livingston Awards. After almost a decade reporting on the car business from Detroit, he now lives in San Francisco, a local. Dan Neal's written about cars for almost 3 decades and won many awards for his writing. He is the author of the Rumble Seat column, which runs Saturdays in the Wall Street Journal. Previously, he was the auto columnist for the LA Times from 2003 to 2010. He went to work as a contributing editor at Car and Driver. In 2004, he won the Pulitzer Prize for criticism for his column, and today, he is the only car columnist ever to win a Pulitzer. A warm welcome to Tim and Dan.
Thank you.
Thank you, Allison. It's nice to be here. Tim, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, Dan, for having me.
This is a very exciting for me. I've spent the weekend with your book, and so I have many questions. And of course, first of all, congratulations. It's a wonderful book, and it tells a story that needs to be told over and over in very many ways, from business schools to case studies of finance and manufacturing, and of course, science and technology. So congratulations for wrapping all of that into a very compelling book.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it. Maybe I'll start off by just reading a little bit of it to set the table.
Please do. Please do.
Okay. This comes from the beginning of the book. So great are the barriers to entering the car business that the last major new U.S. car maker to emerge that is still around today was Chrysler. That was in 1925. Or, as Musk likes to remind people in playing up the outrageous long shot he's taking, only 2 U.S. car companies have not gone bankrupt, Ford and Tesla. So you'd pretty much have to be delusional to enter such a competition, which some think Musk is. But he hasn't shrunk from the challenge. Instead, he has willed himself and his company to where the lofty visions of Silicon Valley meet the harsh reality of Detroit. His big idea is that in Tesla, he can make electric cars really work, that they can outperform their gas-guzzling cousins, that they can outstyle them, out-tech them, save customers billions of dollars a year on gasoline, and in doing so, save the world from itself. But it is a promise that at times obscures the ruthless business ambition and imperative under which Musk and Tesla operate. Many of us might misunderstand or underestimate Tesla's endgame. They might see the car as a toy for the green conscious family down the block with money to burn, or for the status inclined hedge funder with the progressive heir, or else it's the new Ferrari for the walking midlife crisis who just parked next to you at the train station. But these niche existences, they are decidedly not what Tesla is about. And that is why the fate of the company rides on the Model 3, the electric car for the masses. As one Wall Street banker lamented years ago, either they become a niche manufacturer like Porsche or Maserati and make 50,000 high-end cars annually, or they crack the code on a $30,000 car that would put them on the inflection point of a large industrial automaker. That inflection point is the Model 3.
That is what history seemed to bear out. You know, when the Model 3 hit after it fits and starts, it transformed the company's prospects, and it created this virtuous spiral, as you refer to in the book, of expectation and fulfillment of expectation, all driven by sort of a spirit of hope among the true believers. And so, yes, did the Model 3 turn out to be the final inflection point, or were there more dragons ahead for Tesla in the last 2 years after Model 3?
Yeah, you know, the thing about the Model 3 coming out, it wasn't a perfect birth. There was several years of having to learn how to walk to get the car out. And that surprised a lot of Wall Street, surprised a lot of investors, surprised a lot of enthusiasts. You know, 2019, I think early on, a lot of people some gave up some hope. They thought maybe it was finally Tesla wasn't going to play out the way it was supposed to. But the misunderstanding was that Tesla wasn't done yet. They were still working on the Model 3 factory in China, and that would prove to be the second kind of leg in bringing out the Model 3 that was so important.
Right. I understand that. I mean, the deal they have with China is unprecedented. The deal they have with the national government of China is really unprecedented. Very, a very cooperative and equal rights kind of deal. Unlike other VCs in China, they really wanted them there.
Yeah. So, and what's so different about it is they don't have a local partner. They're just in there making. Their profit is their profit, whereas a General Motors has to share it with a local partner.
I believe Tesla's a one of one in that category among Western companies. I could be wrong.
Groundbreaking.
It's pretty close.
Groundbreaking.
Yes, exactly. Now, let's talk. The passage you read goes right to the issue of Elon's ambiguity, both as a business leader and as sort of I don't want to say a spiritual leader, but sort of a leader of the good. Someone who is motivated by concerns about climate change and sustainability, but someone who also has adopted some pretty ruthless practices in pursuit of keeping his company afloat. And I continue through the book. You manage beautifully to sustain the mystery of it. Is he a saint, or is he a sinner, or did it require someone who's such an iconoclast to go after Wall Street, which itself needed taking down the assumptions that drove all the shorts in those early years?
Well, the question, is he a hero or is he a villain? I guess it depends on the day, because he's had to essentially be both roles. And that's been, I think, kind of confounding to a lot of people who watch the company. It's not black or white. There's a lot of gray in the Tesla story. And, it's very frustrating to a lot of people because they either want to make him the villain or they want to make him the hero. And there's a lot going on there, right? And some of that gets to just the idea that what Tesla was doing, what he was trying to do was really hard. I mean, in an unprecedented kind of way. He was not necessarily going up against the Mary Barras of the world. He was going up against the Henry Fords and the Billy Durants of the world, who created something to begin with and put something in motion 100 years ago. And he was having to fight against those kinds of odds. And so, you know, at the end of the day, it takes somebody who is pretty tough and pretty okay with risk and okay with, knocking a lot of heads to get there.
Yeah, risk is definitely the theme of the book. Is that, yes, the bet of the century? Absolutely a great word to put in that subhead, because so many times, this is kind of a white knuckle adventure. I have to say, I followed this closely, but I had no idea how close they came so many times from skipping off the atmosphere and burning, or disappearing into space. I think, of just recently, how close they came to financial disaster. And so luck favors the prepared. That is the saying. When you think about things like when COVID arrived, and Elon and Tesla had already pioneered a home delivery system that seemed to be tailor-made for these constraints, which gave them a market advantage that no one else had anticipated, except perhaps maybe Elon himself. Don't you kind of go, that was a canny move, man. That was really, that wasn't just luck.
Well, you bring up some interesting points there. It kind of reminds me, Tesla in a lot of ways reminds me of Ford during the Great Recession. Ford comes out of the Great Recession having spent a lot of money in new product. They're ready to go when the economy bounces back, and they were able to avoid bankruptcy like GM and Chrysler, and they had a halo around them. Where similarly with COVID, Tesla goes into that just loaded with some really great weapons. They've got a factory that's just come online in China, allowing them to make cars in China when their lone U.S. factory in the U.S. is knocked offline for several weeks because of pandemic-related precautions here by the government. And you talk about the delivery processes. These are things that really helped Tesla get through that very, very dark period. It could have gone very badly for them. And it's not like they made some huge profit. They eke the profit out, in part because of regulatory credits that they get because they sell only electric vehicles. They sell those to their competitors who don't have the same kind of fleet. That definitely helped them. But a profit is a profit, and it told the market that they could execute in one of the worst environments of a generation. And it gave a lot of people a lot of confidence that, hey, maybe Elon Musk can execute going forward. And that really helped them do something that is a constant theme throughout the book. And that is they always need cash. It's bending metal is a cash-intensive business, and they were able to go out and raise a fortune off of the excitement around the company very cheaply and give themselves a cash hoard that will help them throughout this year, next year, as they fund their growth and any kind of cyclical downturn they might see.
Right. Now, that brings up a very key point in terms of Elon's many detractors on the street. This was regarded as not fair play. Now, this was an opinion held by shorters who themselves represent, I think, a corruption of financial capitalism and industries. I don't think that's how it's supposed to work. But in any event, setting that aside, people felt that Elon took advantage of the regulatory relief system in California unduly, right? He took advantage of the $7,500 DOE credit per vehicle. And yet, see, this is what's so crazy. He was there to take advantage of those regulations at the appropriate time. Nothing was stopping General Motors from taking advantage of the very same regulations. They just chose another path. And I wonder now, in this era of sort of general vindication of these early bets, how Elon and the company looks to business history.
Yeah, it's interesting. Elon has been very sensitive to that suggestion that he's taken government help and that sort of thing. And there's no mistake that they benefited from a regulatory scheme that want to encourage zero emission vehicles. They're benefiting it in the U.S. and in China and Europe as these governments try to push the industry to the electrification of the auto industry. But in part of that push recently is because of the success of Tesla. The Model 3 has demonstrated to the market that customers are willing to pay, sometimes willing to pay a premium to buy an electric car that does not have compromises, that has performance, that is considered cool and sexy. Oh, and it just happens to be an electric car. And that was one of the original ideas about Tesla going back to the beginning, going back to the founding with Martin Eberhard, that Tesla was going to be a demonstration that the electric car didn't have to be a golf cart. It was born out of a midlife crisis of a man who wanted to buy an electric Porsche and couldn't find it, and thought, well, why isn't this out there? Martin Eberhard was concerned about the environment, concerned about the U.S.'s dependence on foreign oil. And he thought, well, why not have an electric sports car? Some of the primal parts of an electric car would be great for a sports car. As you know, Dan, it's got great torque. That 0 to 60 get up that you get at the light is nothing like that, like an electric car. That's great fun.
No, to me, there are two things about electric cars. Three things: torque, center of gravity, and the fact that articulation at all four wheels is so much more instant and conforming to the move values, so that you can maintain almost perfect 100% traction at all four wheels in a way that you could not possibly with the mechanical linkage and IC. But that, I mean, gosh, if it only came down to convincing consumers that electric cars were better to drive, it would be a short putt. I'll tell you what I do like about this book personally is I'm no industrial innovator, but I know what it is to shoot myself in the foot. I know what it is to try and be funny and fail. I know what it is to be for my mouth to be my own worst enemy. I think what's funny about this book is that these, what would seem like, trifling human failings should befall a person of such enormous intellect in other ways. In some ways, it's almost unbelievable that someone so smart could be so dumb in other ways. And you want to reach out and go say, please, no. And people did. His handlers constantly tried to rein him in. No luck. Tell me about that.
Yeah, it's a tension that runs there, right? And some of it, let's take a step back. I mean, clearly he's living his life in a very public way that you do not see with other CEOs of major automakers or just companies in general. You don't see Tim Cook, the CEO of Apple, living his life on Twitter in such a way like Elon Musk. And in some ways, that has benefited Tesla greatly, right? Tesla and Elon Musk are intertwined in a way that you just do not see with companies these days. And so when he generates that enthusiasm from fans out there, that benefits Tesla, benefits the brand. It helps them reduce. They don't have to advertise on TV, for example. He can just tell his 50 million plus followers on Twitter that something is coming and they get super excited. The flip side of that is he is essentially, his life is working and his family is intertwined in that. His personal goings are intertwined in that. And he has a hard time separating things. And so if something is going on in his personal life, he's probably going to let the world know about it in cryptic ways on Twitter. If there's problems at Tesla or SpaceX, these things have a way of bleeding out. And when the stakes are so high at a place like Tesla, where investors, the short sellers understand that they're on that edge, that can be unnerving, and that can lead to trouble. And you think you're really getting at what we saw, a dramatic drama play out in 2018 as the company was near bankruptcy. It's months into trying to bring out the Model 3 compact car and struggling mightily with production. And then struggling mightily with delivery. And Musk seems to be, in the factory, feeling that pressure. And then on top of that, he's living out the drama on Twitter as well, whether he's engaging in fights with short sellers or engaging in fights with the media or engaging in fights with perceived enemies. Now, just because you're paranoid doesn't mean people aren't out to get you. There's clearly some people who had a lot of money to gain at seeing Tesla go down. But is some of the fights he was taking just made a lot of people's heads shake, and they really were concerned about his ability to kind of pull through there. And 2018 was really that time when a lot of close observers thought that Elon was finally going to get his comeuppance, that he finally gone too far and Tesla was going to collapse. In fact, I began this book thinking it was going to be the story of Tesla's collapse. 2018 was pretty close, but then in a rather remarkable period, there's this turnaround, and we see the company become the world's most valuable automaker in 2020. We've seen quarter after quarter of profitability, and to me, that was one of the most remarkable corporate turnarounds of a generation. And it came down to, in part, because of some of the things that you brought up, the idea that they had developed, a delivery system that worked. They had opened this factory. They were able to open a factory in China, and also they were able to raise all this cash. But part of it was the big bet that Elon kept making, that he could pull through this, where another company might have taken the foot off the accelerator and said, let's slow down and try to just digest all this that we've taken on. That's not how he does it.
Right. You're now covering Apple, which I understand is a little different corporate culture. And but I want you to reflect on this notion that only Elon's breakneck, helter-skelter, crazy pace could have gotten them ahead of the market in a way that they could have actually stayed in business. Like, for example, it was Elon's judgment there in the middle of the night when he tweeted the 420 financing secured. It was his judgment unconsciously that the SEC was a paper tiger. Is that how you read that, or?
I don't think he was that. I don't think that was what was good. I think he was more motivated by his frustration with short sellers and feeling like this was his opportunity to take the company private out of that public realm of being publicly traded, that he could perhaps shelter the company in some way through going private from some of the scrutiny that he felt they were under.
But he was nowhere close to finding the money, right? The Saudis like, yeah, right, great, groovy. We'll take you private. That was a bit of a reach, was it not?
Clearly the government felt it was a fraud. He has said he felt it wasn't, but if you get into the details, it clearly was not ironed out in any way, right? I mean, this was exactly one of those times when he was pushing things and clearly hoping to kind of land the act, even though it was pretty windy and maybe he didn't know where the ground was, right? And we see this throughout the company, where you're getting at this interesting point of like, the Tesla thing is they need cash. And Elon at first put his personal fortune into it to the point where he, was facing kind of his personal demise. But on top of that, he was able to sell it to investors whenever he needed to sell it to investors and build. Right. And doing that was selling this vision of the future that people wanted, the idea of what Tesla could be beyond whatever problem or whatever point in time it was at. And he's a master of that, clearly. And now that frustrates some people who feel that he's pushing it too far. It has also excited a legion of people who want to be optimistic about the future, right? They are perhaps tired of staid corporations, tired of institutions they feel let down by, and within Tesla and within Elon, they see this authenticity that speaks to them, which is getting beyond just kind of your normal corporate kind of branding story.
When we see the rise of activist board members in very, very big companies who are sort of, holding them to account for past environmental sins or whatever, was Elon firstest with the mostest there? How do you read that?
Well, the story of Tesla is really a story of a fight for control. Whether it's a fight to have the power to power the vehicle, to have the power to change the company, the power to change the industry, the power to change the world. This constant fight is going on. And early on, there was discussion or debate about what actually Tesla was going to be. The big breakthrough technologically early on was the battery pack management in the vehicle, the idea of how to keep those batteries from getting too hot and becoming essentially a bomb on wheel. And some thought, why not become a supplier? Supply the auto industry. Why not go down that route? And Elon eventually had to supply some things to Mercedes and Toyota because they had to pay the bills. But he was determined to become an automaker because the argument was to change the world, to change the auto industry, they needed to have cars out there to show that this was possible, to show that people wanted them. So it was even at the beginning an argument over where this was going. And as the company gets bigger, it's clear that there could have easily been a slowdown of things, digest what's happening. But that's not the Tesla that Elon was running. And it gets to a core kind of management and strategy philosophy that he has, that momentum is key. If you're winning, it's like being a gambler. You want to keep that hot hand going. The challenge is that sometimes maybe you get a little too far out.
Yes, there were many times when he seemed to be a little bit over his skis when he started production without stamping machines and so forth. But that's okay because, as you say, this was the pace was a whole new ingredient in this kind of manufacturing. This idea of rushing it to market, trying to get ahead, trying to capitalize on advanced publicity. This is a little bit different. Not a little bit. It's just fundamentally different than the way car makers used to do it. I wonder what you think about this. Tesla without Elon.
Well, it's interesting. There wouldn't be a Tesla the way we think of it today without Elon Musk, right? Because of those intangible things he brought to it, that ability to generate the excitement. Listen, clearly there are people out there who feel like he's gone too far. In a lot of ways, many short sellers have not been incorrect to say that the company appears to be overvalued, that they are not going about things the way other automakers are doing it. And yeah, that is absolutely true. And you can understand their frustration. If they had gone about it the way other automakers had done it, they probably wouldn't be where they are.
At all.
Exactly. It fundamentally gets to an issue that Elon Musk brings the entrepreneurial mindset, the Silicon Valley mindset to this company. He is approaching every quarter like an entrepreneur. You do not become the CEO of a major automaker with that same kind of mentality. Your risk tolerance is much lower. You are climbing a corporate ladder and that is built upon success after success after success. If you were like Elon Musk and said, we're going to work on this Model S. We're going to show the world that we can make the best car that happens to be electric, and it's going to cost $50,000. And then when you bring it out, it's really more like $120,000. If you worked at GM or Ford and you were the product manager that did that, you probably wouldn't have a job very long, right?
You'd be buried in a shallow grave somewhere.
And that's really something that when people ask, well, what did Elon do? He enabled that at Tesla, right? Going back to the early days of Tesla, he had hired several executives to work on the Model S. It was called White Star, codename White Star. And
I remember
he was so frustrated with what the work they were doing. And they were trying to think outside the box. They were cutting deals with Ford to get, suspension here and parts there and get a part catalog. And they were going to try to make a $50,000 sedan. And he just was disgusted by it. And the problem was, they were given the budget and they were trying to make the budget. And Elon once he became the CEO, he could throw the budget out as long as he could raise the money to build it and to sell it. And that's something that you can't do if you're just a grunt. You have to be the Elon Musk at Tesla to do that.
Right. Okay. And that goes to the question of whether he's a sui generis executive, that there will never be another one like him. And but while you're telling that story, I want to tell you another time when I felt deep connection to Elon in this book was that, automobiles are cheaped out, right? From prototype to production, shit gets taken out of them. They become dumbed down. It's a very frustrating process. What Elon was addressing in those early days with White Star was the sort of the presumption of mediocrity that came with car design in those early days. And throughout until finally, what I think the biggest triumph of the of Model Y is the high pressure die casting. As a car guy, that makes me very excited because I know what comes after that, which is a whole car die casting. But you know, so many times he took chances that people just could not even wrap their heads around, and you know, and I don't know, lucky. I don't know. It's hard to say.
But you know, now working.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah. Well, working for him can be incredibly frustrating because it's interesting. I talked to a lot of people, and on one hand, super excitement to work for him because he doesn't want to do it the way you've always done it at a car company. He wanted to think differently. It really gets into this idea of physics first, you know, where just because something has been done, we shouldn't take that cliche in our mind to keep doing it. And so you're really addressing everything kind of going down to the nitty gritty of that. Well, sometimes that frustration can also be like, there is a reason why things are done the way they are. And sometimes it's a proven thing, right? I think about the windshield wipers. Elon wanted them to be automatic, you know, when it starts to rain. This is something Mercedes has. This is a thing in luxury cars. Well, he didn't want to use the sensor that others had. He figured there's already a camera looking out the window for the autopilot system. Why can't the AI just detect that and turn it on? Well, so that sounds great, but in practicality, it was much harder than anticipated. And so they had to divert the resources of the people working on Autopilot to work on this automatic windshield wiper. And so those are the kinds of things where you would see, you know, these kind of battles of, is that the greatest use of resources at the point where you're trying to bring out this car? Or, you know, you could also understand it could save money down the road. So these are the battles that are going on.
If there was one part of the book that I wanted more of, like more cowbell, was the shitstorm around Model X, which eventually required a very exotic titanium roof member, if you'll pardon the expression, to make that dimensionally and thermally stable, which caused a fortune. And it was all because a kind of as you described, it wasn't trivial, but let's say it was very idiosyncratic demand from Elon that worked just that way. And it set them back, a year, something like that?
It's one of the things that's not appreciated between what was going on there in 2016, early 2016. The birthing of that vehicle was really production hell. We think of production hell as the Model 3, but there was this battle going on to get the vehicle out. There's two things going on. They're expanding the capacity of that factory, being able to build more vehicles. It's really kind of a teething process, if you will. And then they got just lots of problems with the Model X that are causing all sorts of headaches and whatnot. And cash is running low. The stock is affected. And, you know, this is setting up one of the years where a lot of risky decisions are taken that put the company on the road to near bankruptcy in 2018. And what I mean by that is, not only was Elon struggling with the Model X at the beginning of the year and meeting Wall Street expectations, but his other company, Solar City, a solar panel company where he was the largest investor, his cousins had founded it, they were in trouble as well. And the fear in the Elon Inc. world was if that company, if Solar City had gone under, then the other parts of Elon's empire would have been affected, and he would have had a harder time raising the cash needed to keep going. So you've got that going on. And on top of that, you've got problems with the company's new driver assistance program called Autopilot. Really, this program that was supposed to help the driver, it was increasingly kind of projected as the future of driving, the path to autonomous vehicle technology. Well, people were misusing it, and in fact, somebody died. And so you've got, you know, controversy on top of controversy, and, you know, setting up the company for a lot of trouble in the years to come, the way they're handling them.
Oh, that reminds me. So the trolley car scenario is I think in some ways dispositive of the sort of worldview that Elon takes. He argued that yes, these incidents, these edge cases where there might be problems, people does not in any way counterbalance the life saving, you know, hundreds of thousands of people that could be saved with this technology. And he was saying that statistically, it's insignificant, 1 or 2. But of course, it's hard to argue that people's lives are statistically insignificant. And I think that was a thing that he got caught out on with a full self-driving FSD and the AI. How does that read to you from your chair?
Yeah, well, it's interesting. So we're in 2016. Autopilot has been launched. Autopilot, for people in the audience who don't know, is a system that's supposed to help the driver with the road. And so think of it as super cruise control. It controls the speed. It can keep you in the lanes. You are instructed to keep your hands on the wheel. But the way it's been designed, you can at the time, you could take your hands off for a longer period than you can now. And it really feels like the car is driving itself, even though it's not. And in fact, Elon has even admitted this. The more you use it, the more you think it can do than what it can actually do. So you get lulled into thinking that it has capabilities that it actually doesn't have. And so internally, the company was seeing that and becoming concerned. And after this tragic death of a gentleman named Joshua Brown, there was an effort to kind of rein in that abuse, if you will, in the car. At the same time, however, you have to remember there is this kind of huge interest and excitement in the next leap of technology, that fully self-driving technology that Google has got its Waymo project. GM is working on self-driving with a startup called Cruise at that period. And there's just a lot of increased excitement in the marketplace about it. And he has been talking about it as well. And he's pushing the company to bring out the next generation of their hardware. And really, it's just more of Autopilot. And internally, they're concerned that Elon's going to go out and say, this thing is fully self-driving. And they don't think that has that ability. And there's concern about that and pushback. And ultimately, Elon does go out and say,
FSD. I mean,
it's
called FSD, right? That's a little bit of a branding problem right there, full self-driving.
Right. And so that was a period of time in the people that I talked to where they felt like there was a change in the corporate culture. Up until that point, Elon might go out and say, we're going to do X or Y, and people might be learning about it for the first time, or they might not realize that they can do that, but it was in the realm of possibility. Here was a time where some people are saying they didn't feel like it was possible, and time would prove them out. The hardware they would need, ultimately Tesla would announce they needed to upgrade the computing power, and we still don't have fully self-driving vehicles, but here's this point where they was just feeling like he was pushing that narrative too far, and it comes at a point where Elon is selling the next kind of idea of what Tesla is, that idea that it's an electric car company, but it's also a self-driving car company, because that's the hot thing in the Valley at that moment in time.
We have a question. Is there a historical figure that you would compare Elon Musk to?
Well, it's interesting. Having spent a long time in Detroit writing about the auto industry before coming to the Valley here, I see some parallels with the early days of Detroit. You think of Detroit car companies now as being these stodgy things, but Detroit was the Silicon Valley of its time, and there were the egos and bravado then that we see now. The Zuckerbergs and the Bezos and the Musks, they were Ford and Durant and these other people who were making huge bets and trying to make life-changing companies. And so you see a lot of the similarities, at least I do, in those early days of Detroit. Maybe not an individual person, but you see parts of Henry Ford, you see parts of Billy Durant. You definitely, he probably needs an Alfred Sloan. Remember Alfred Sloan was the one who kind of industrialized GM, and that's one of Tesla's biggest challenges, is it really kind of becoming a grown-up company.
Well, now it's very interesting you brought this man up, because people have said they've criticized Elon for this and that, and I'm like, let me introduce you to Henry Ford. Let me introduce you to Charles Kettering, who poisoned generations with lead to save a couple of pennies. Let me introduce you to what's that guy's name? James M. Roach, who had Nader followed around, or Piech or Porsche or Ghosn. The point is that automotive executives are typically a very peculiar and prickly bunch. And not a few of them that I have met are absolutely batshit crazy. So I think that one thing that gets lost in judging Elon for his excesses is compared to who? Look at other CEOs. Look at Apple would be the best case. Steve Jobs, a maniacal genius. So how do you feel about that? Do you think he's been judged too harshly on the scale of industrialists?
Well, it's interesting to where Elon is going to rank. It'll be hard for us to say because he still has many more years to come. But if Tesla was to go away today, let's say Tesla's gone tomorrow. We don't know what happens, but it's gone tomorrow. You could make an argument that Elon won the day. That his vision for the future of the car is now the vision that General Motors, Volkswagen, Mercedes are all chasing. The idea that the vehicle of the future is going to be electric. That is in large part because of the work that Tesla and Elon have done. So if we were to judge him today, he won.
Yeah, I agree. I think that with all his flaws, he moved the needle in a way that probably no other individual could have done. And it wasn't easy for him. I mean, he's kind of a wreck. But the company seems to be on a fairly stable footing now. And so now, Tim, what are we doing for the rest of the evening? Do you want to take some more questions?
Oh, please. Yeah, if there are any coming in, that'd be great. Okay,
there's a question here, but you talk about his family and his childhood background. Now, that's a good question. You do mention his upbringing in South Africa, his father, their divorce, and how much did the boy inform the man?
That's always the question. One of the things that when I was working on this book, this is not a biography of Elon. That book has been done. Ashley Vance did a wonderful job of the biography, but Elon is definitely a character in the story of Tesla, right? And so there are some points where I do get into Elon's private life, and it's usually to try to inform how it's affecting Tesla. And the question always is, what happened to Elon early on to kind of make him the street fighter that he tends to be? He doesn't tolerate what he perceives to be bullying, and he talks early on about how he was bullied and he had this feeling that he had some tough childhood years. And when you watch him now, you definitely get the sense that sometimes he's acting out of that kind of like reflective. He's not going to stand to be bullied anymore, right? So you think about in 2018 when he's getting into these Twitter fights with people who, from his perspective, were trying to harm his vision, trying to harm his company, trying to harm him, and he's swinging back pretty hard. The thing that I think a lot of people would respond that he is now he was at that time one of the richest people in the world. Now he is, if he's not the richest, the number 2 richest, and his hitting back, feels a lot different to those smaller people, and he's maybe lost that perspective of. He's not the up and coming. He is Goliath, and at this point, though the company still has lots of challenges, but he is definitely the bigger entity in a lot of these situations. And you see him kind of grappling with that, and you can see him exercising his power at certain points in ways that probably leave some to pause.
Did you find Elon's rosebud in all of this? What his prime motivation might be? I mean, did you in any way did you find any sort of totems of that gave you insight that you didn't have before?
Yeah, I don't know what his rosebud is, but he clearly, it's interesting. One of the world's richest people, he doesn't spend his money like some of these other billionaires, right? I mean, he clearly enjoys luxurious things, but he's largely putting his money into his ideas, his engineering, whether it's funding Tesla or SpaceX or rockets or these other startups. He's living kind of in some ways a kind of very focused life, and
monastic even.
Right. I mean, this is very much his passions in a way that other entrepreneurs, you see them going off and living on an island. And now that, don't cry a river for him. I mean, he's, traveling the world in a private airplane, and he's dating a musician, and his, has quite a different lifestyle than you and I. Well, at least
I've dated musicians. It's overrated. I was going to say.
But
especially that Grimes. I'm not sure. I'm
well,
okay.
It's interesting. So the book doesn't get into his personal life that much, but it does when it influences in the company, and it does because of this. Because he has a hard time turning off when he's having problems in his love life. It bleeds over, and it's a thing that it continually pops up when he goes through his first divorce. There was some risk for the company because of the potential for maybe she would get some part of the company, and they were already on tenuous footing.
I had no idea with that part of the book. I had no idea that was going on. That was really interesting. I was like, oh my God, the whole thing could have come to tears in a divorce settlement.
It was this was a tension in the background, and it really only became public in a big way when the company was going public. And at that point, the fight was really kind of almost over. But, early on, Elon's fight to maintain control was this huge issue. And then when you see his next wife, when, he's having problems with her, for the first time, he's kind of bleeding out in public on Twitter. Twitter's becoming a thing. And you start to see some of these early signs of what's going to come, as we know, in 2018. And then in 2017, 2016, he's dating Amber Heard, the movie star, and he's very, he's very happy about this at one point. And she's showing up at the office, and people can tell that he's very proud of this. But the other thing is he's putting a lot of time in seeing her. You're going to Australia or to London, and he's complaining, according to people I've talked to, about the jet lag catching up to him. And, he's a guy that doesn't sleep a lot to begin with. And he's really burning it at both ends, candle at both ends. And that's at a point in time when the company is already under a huge, huge risk.
Yeah. We have a question about apparently the situation between Elon and Peter Rawlinson, who stepped into to direct manufacturing in in the 2014 or so.
Well, Peter Rawlinson
then left to start work with Lucid.
Yeah. So Peter Rawlinson's an interesting story that I think is we explore in the book, and so. We'll step back a little bit. Elon becomes CEO at the end of 2008. Immediately is facing a financial crisis, gets the company through it. In early 2009, you really start to see what I call Tesla 2.0. This is when he's putting his stamp on who's going to work at Tesla, what the ambitions are going to be with the Model S, what the culture is really going to be like. And Peter Rawlinson is one of the big hires that he makes. And Peter comes from, an interesting background in the auto space. He's the chief engineer for the car. He's going to be the guy who has to put on the road the vision of what the car looks like. And J.B. Straubel, who is in charge of the battery kind of technology, he's got to package all of that in the car and make it into a real car. And that's a huge undertaking. And his approach, he came out of Lotus. He came out of consulting. And his idea of doing things was lean and fast in a way that you just weren't kind of seeing from other big project managers at traditional automakers. So he had just a different kind of mindset, and the two of them clicked right away. Kind of the idea of a special forces mentality. You were going to try to find the best you could and have a small team just work the problem as fast as possible. And by all accounts, Peter and Elon got along very well in the early part. And they and that's a kind of a common theme that shows up with Elon and new hires. He's very good at finding talent that kind of aligns with his vision for the world and deploying them. And he's always very excited at the beginning. But at a certain point, the honeymoon ends and it becomes very difficult. And it became very difficult for Peter and Elon as the problems with the model, the natural challenges of bringing out the car arose. There was these natural disagreements and huge tension and drama there.
Mm. Well, I have to say, the most you could not have asked for a better review from Elon himself than what you close the book with, which I think is just priceless. He says, most of what you read in this book, most, but not all of what you read in this book is nonsense. And I love the fact that he allowed, but not all. That was, I mean, I take that as a victory. And it's well worth buying and well worth reading. And I hope, Tim, that this book is the first of many from you. I would love to see a similar book after your tenure at Apple. And
thank you. I appreciate the nice words.
Well, thank you for your time. This has been wonderful. I've really enjoyed it. And thank you for the bookshop for staging it. Thank you, Allison.
Thank
Hi,
you.
everybody. Thank you both so much. This was a fascinating conversation. And I highly recommend this book. It's the kind of book that's a great gift too, if you're looking for something for someone who's interested in either more about Elon Musk or cars or what's going on in the future with electric vehicles. Please come to the bookstore, order it online, or call us and we'll send it to you. Book Passage is open 10 to 5.
Buy it, read it, give it as a gift.
That's right. But don't give the
hard sell for you there, Allison.
Buy extra copies as a gift.
Right, exactly. That's what I meant.
Okay, thank you. Ditto that. So thank you all so much, and thank you to our hosts, to our authors, and to our listeners. We look forward to seeing you next time. Everybody stay safe. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye, guys.